Hello, folks. Welcome to Science Talk. I am your host, Jim Massa. I want to share with you what you see right here, and I'm sure many of you have probably heard about this. Climate change is turning parts of Antarctica green. Researchers map beginning of new ecosystem as algae bloom across surface of melting snow. Now, if you look at this photo, you can see streaks of green, orange. That's algae. Now, the presence of algae in ice is nothing new. They call them cryosilic, basically algae found in ice. In fact, I will be preparing a presentation discussing ice algae. So look for that coming down the pipe after this one is posted. In fact, there was a colleague at where I work who would go to Denali Park, and he would look at the algae found in the ice and found in the snow. That was his specialty. So it is a phenomenon, but it's just interesting to see it taking hold in Antarctica, which conditions usually don't promote such things. And why is this happening? Because it's warming, and I'm going to be jumping at the conclusion of going through this with you. I'll be going over to this report on Antarctica reaching temperatures greater than 20 C. So before we get into it, the scientists have created the first large-scale map of microscopic algae on the Antarctic Peninsula as they bloom across the surface of the melting snow, tinting the surface green, potentially creating a source of nutrition for other species. Here's the other thing. If you have colors other than white, albedo is reduced. And if albedo is reduced, that means more energy is being absorbed, less energy reflected back out into space. This could have the potential for another positive feedback loop being set up. Okay, so let's look at this video here.
And on studying the snow algae, is a special microscopic algae that live on the snow surface. And over here, you can see there's patches of green and hopefully you can see some patches of red if the light conditions permit it.
Certainly what we're seeing is that in the warmer parts of the peninsula, blooms are moving higher up onto local glaciers and ice caps. I think we will probably see more coverage on smaller islands in Antarctica.
With the snow algae blooms, see they rely on slushy snow to actually bloom. So they need liquid water to actually reproduce the right bloom. So if the climate gets too warm and that snow actually becomes very slushy and melts out very fast, you're losing that habitat for the snow algae to actually bloom in the first place. So you're wiping out a complete ecosystem in essentially 1 year. In terms of the amount of carbon that's required to actually make these things in Antarctica, it's equivalent to about the amount of carbon that's being emitted.
There's some algae right there.
75,000 average UK petrol car vehicles. So it seems a lot, but in terms of the global carbon budget, it's insignificant. Now we have this baseline of where they are, we can then see whether the blooms will start increasing, as the model suggests, in the future, and whether to date we've actually been increasing the size over the past 10 years.
Chin strap penguins. So the audio was a little difficult to understand that, but basically the gist of it is seeing these algae and their appearance is indicating heating to allow them to thrive. This is basically the kind of a quick summation of it. So let's quickly go through the rest of this article. British team behind the research believe these blooms will expand their range in the future because global heating is creating more of the slushy conditions the algae need to thrive in. In some areas, the density is such that turning the snow bright green and can be seen from space. So this was published in the journal Nature Communications. Biologists from the University of Cambridge and the British Antarctic Survey, BAS is they like have a year-round presence down in Antarctica. Spent 6 years detecting and measuring the green snow algae using a combination of satellite data and ground observations. Now, take a look at this photo. Okay, this is Andrew Gray, who we just saw in the video. He's geotagging the snow algal blooms. Basically, what that means is he's putting position markers on here so you can get the exact GPS coordinates and then examine how those change over time. But this is all algae in the snow. All this here, that's algae. They've already found that algae have formed close bonds with tiny fungal spores and bacteria. And that's, in essence, we have a community. And this community could potentially form new habitats. In some place, it would be the beginning of a new ecosystem, said Matt Davey. One of the scientists led the study. We saw him in that video. He described the algae map as a missing piece of the carbon cycle jigsaw in the Antarctic. Very interesting statement. And I can't say he's off the mark. Identified 1,679 separate blooms of green snow algae, which together covered an area of 1.9 square kilometers, equating to a carbon sink of about 479 tons a year. This is equivalent to the emissions of about 875,000 car journeys in the UK, though in global terms, it is too small to make much of a difference to the overall planet carbon budget. Almost two-thirds of the green algal blooms are found on small, low-lying islands around the peninsula, which has experienced some of the most intense heating. New temperature records being set this summer, and I'm going to be jumping to this story next. The snow algae were less conspicuous in colder southern regions. Scientists have previously observed a change in green lichen and moss, but these grow extremely slowly compared with algae. They hope to also measure red and orange algae in the future, calculate how the presence of algae might be affecting albedo. So Dr. Gray finishes off with, I think we'll get more large blooms in the future. Before we know whether this has a significant impact on carbon budgets or bioalbedo, we need to run the numbers. Translation, collect the data and analyze the crap out of it. So this is interesting. And I said, I'm in the middle of creating a PowerPoint presentation discussing ice algae. I figured this would be interesting, and then tie that into other dynamics of the planet. So this is very interesting development, and it tells you overall that the ice is warming. Antarctica is warming, at least in the areas where they're finding this. And this will reduce albedo, adding to more warming as sunlight energy is absorbed. Okay, on to this story. Antarctic temperature rises above 20 C for the first time on record. Scientists describe 20.75 C logged at Seymour Island as incredible and abnormal. So looking at glaciers in the South Shetland Islands, temperatures in the region have warmed rapidly in recent years. The Antarctic has registered a temperature of more than 20 C, which is 68 Fahrenheit, for the first time on record, prompting fears of climate instability in the world's greatest repository of ice. Think back to the video I did on tipping points. Antarctic ice sheets was named one of the tipping points. The 20.75 C logged by Brazilian scientists at Seymour Island on 9 February was almost a full degree higher than the previous record of 19.8 taken on Cygnus Island in January 1982. Remember, in the southern hemisphere, December, January, February is their summer. It follows another recent temperature on 6 February. An Argentinian research station, Esperanza, measured 18.3 C, which is the highest reading on the continental Antarctic Peninsula. These records need to be confirmed by the World Meteorological Organization, but they are consistent with a broader trend on the peninsula and nearby islands, which have warmed by almost 3 C since the pre-industrial era, one of the fastest rates on the planet. And these data are collected about every 3 days from remote locations. Dr. Carlos Schaeffer says, we are seeing the warming trend in many of the sites we are monitoring, but we've never seen anything like this. He works on Terrantar, a Brazilian government project that monitors the impact of climate change on permafrost and biology at 23 sites in the Antarctic. Schaeffer said the temperature of the peninsula, the South Shetland Islands, and the James Ross Archipelago, which Seymour is part of, has been erratic over the past 20 years. After cooling in the first decade of the century, it has warmed rapidly. And the cooling was not necessarily noteworthy, but it was there. So this is Morambio base that recorded this temperature that we see right here, 20.75 C. So we look at it here. I guess this is the cooling that we're kind of referencing. And these are daily fluctuations, right? You know, depending on where the sun is and that kind of stuff here. So these are daily fluctuations. Scientists on the Brazilian Antarctic program say this appears to be influenced by shifts in ocean currents and El Nino events. Right now, let's see, this 2020 El Nino is kind of came out of the El Nino side, the ENSO cycle, kind of came out of the El Nino, and is currently sitting in a neutral configuration. So I would say that is a rather reasonable hypothesis, a reasonable assessment there. We have climatic changes in the atmosphere, which is closely related to changes in permafrost on the ocean. The whole thing is very interrelated, and interconnections. And basically, you know, don't forget what's ENSO. You have changes in, you know, where the high pressure and the low pressure systems are in Indonesia. They move east-west. It will change the current flow. It will depress the pycnocline or raise the pycnocline, what have you. It changes the ocean, and therefore it will also influence the Indian Ocean dipole, which then influences the Southern Oceans. So that statement is perfectly reasonable. So this is a little map showing the location of the site there. And so this is, here's approximately 60 degrees south latitude, which is, if you stay on that heading, you will never see land because it's all ocean there. So we're probably looking in about the, I guess, the 65, 66 degrees south latitude location. Always say, oh no, 60, 70, 89. Okay, so these are 10 degrees increments. I didn't see the other line. So this is 60, 70. Yes, that's about, I was right, it's about 65. So that shows you the location where they recorded that. Temperatures in eastern and central Antarctica are relatively stable. There are growing concerns about West Antarctica, where warming oceans are undermining the huge Thwaites and Pine Island glaciers. And you have seen me, for those of you who follow this channel, you've seen me report on the status of those two glaciers quite frequently, and where some of it's basically in danger of collapsing. Until now, this has led to a relatively low amount of sea level rise, but this could change rapidly if there's a sustained jump in temperatures. This is the Antarctic Peninsula, this long thing that sticks out like that. And that's most dramatically affected. Okay. On a recent trip to Greenpeace, the Guardian saw glaciers that retreated by more than 100 meters in Discovery Bay, large swaths of land on King George Island, where the snow melted in a little more than a week, leaving dark, exposed rock, which means reduced albedo. While some degree of melt occurs every summer, scientists said it had been more evident in recent years, with temperatures rising more quickly in winter. This is believed to be behind an alarming decline of more than 50% in chinstrap penguin colonies. And we saw the chinstrap featured in that video. They're called a chinstrap because of that little black line that you see like kind of under there, on the side that looks like a chinstrap. Schaefer said monitoring data from these areas could indicate what is in store for other parts of the region. It's important to have sentinel areas like the South Shetlands and the Antarctic Peninsula because they can anticipate developments that will happen in the future, near future, and especially as you go further onto mainland Antarctica. So, record temperatures. And then now, it's one thing to have a peak, a spike, but then to have it like start being consistently at higher levels. That's where the concern starts to lie in, and that's what we're starting to see in Antarctica. So I just wanted to bring those two reports to you, keeping you up to date as best as I can. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your time. Hey friends, this is Jim reminding you to subscribe and share my videos. Also, don't forget to click the bell so that you know when I drop a video in. And I'm also asking for you to please support the work that I do by becoming a patron at patreon.com. Details in the description box below. Thank you for your continued support.